World effort for the restoration of corrupted and deforested lands, the Bonn Challenge, launched in 2011 by Germany and International Union for the Conservation of the Nature, IUCN, aimed first to restore, in less than a decade, from 2011 to 2020, 150 million hectares of forest landscapes. At the 2014 Summit on the Climate held in Lima, in Peru, the New York Declaration on Forest. The New York Declaration on Forest reaffirmed the goal of the challenge in adding 200 million additional hectares in 2030. The declaration was approved by more than 100 governments, civil society organizations and host organizations and private enterprises. The goal: reforest 350 million hectares by 2030. A world effort challenge for climate, but also other development sustainability projects supported by the UN. With 80 million hectares of arable lands and more than 150 million hectares of forest, DRC is unfortunately facing the corruption of its lands and landscapes which need to be restored. It is in that framework the dialogue on the use of lands learning platform involving multiple stakeholders in order to collect knowledges. To implement the stabilization project of the use of lands, Mangai landscape has been selected as one of the sites among the 4 countries, in particular DRC, Ghana, Uganda and Tanzania, with the challenge, each large size causing a lot of socio-economic and critical environmental problems. That is the reason why it was necessary to restore corrupted landscapes of that site, which has a rich biodiversity, among which the hippopotamuses. Thus, the dialogue on the use of the lands in DRC, with the support of its partners, organized in March 2019, one framing national workshop and presentation and validation for the project results, more on the assessment methodology of restoration opportunities of the Mangai Landscape Reserve. Strategies needed to be developed to restore those landscapes in order to allow them to continue to play their role in fight against the climate change. The study conducted on the ground said there is a present threat as hunting, itinerant agriculture on the reserve, and we must restore the site. Idiofa territory in Kwilu province was chosen for the dialogue on the use of land located in 961 kilometers to Kinshasa town. It has an agro-pastoral population estimated around 1,450,035 inhabitants on a surface of 2,000 kilometers square. It is the second in terms of large territories in DRC after Lubero in the east of the DRC. For Jean-Marie Loabwe, territory administrator who launched these works, the works are so important regarding the threats on forest landscape of his territory.
Il y a aussi un problème de dialogue dans ce séminaire-là, dans les forums qu'il y a eu dernièrement ici.
There was a dialogue problem on the use of lands on our last forum. We cannot continue to use lands like that. We have to restore landscapes that we call Mangai Reserve. There's ICCN reserves. We cannot destroy forest in disorder. We need to have permission to do it. There are a lot of people who go to cut trees and forests stay empty and useless. And that is the problem. People have to know the importance of trees, what the tree can give to the society, and we will see what to do. The hippopotamus hunting and reserve of Mangai that consists the landscape is a protected space considered to be the category 5 of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature of more than 1,175,875 hectares. It is also one of the selected sites in the 4 countries identified for the implementation of the stabilization projects of the use of land. Idiofa town was the place for a dialogue on the use of land held in May 31st to June 4th, 2019. It is because the road is not good which bridge Idiofa town to the city of Mangai, and also because of the incapacity of hotels in that town incapable to welcome delegations from Kinshasa, Kikwit, and certain towns of Idiofa territory, and even those came from other countries in Africa and from the US. Besides the reflection workshops on the adoption of such measures aim to optimize the restoration of landscape in Mangai, a visit on the ground on the Ingung site and Paradise Valley belonging to Fajalobi Enterprise. That visit explained the participants on the problems linked to the use of the resource and to their management in the landscape. The Mangai dialogue is about the result of stakeholders' discussion held in Kinshasa from March 12 to March 13, gathering 45 participants of different local and national institutions and actors involved in the management of natural resources and of the use of land in the DRC in general and in the Mangai landscape in particular. Friday, May 31st, the day marking the beginning of dialogue on the use of land in Mangai, Kana Space was a framework of registration work of participants to the opening session with different partners, world especially Congolese ecologist, organization and nature, Friends Ocean, and Nature Friends Ocean, Congolese Institution for the Conservation of the Nature, ICCN, International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, and the Forest Dialogue, TFD, and Idiofa administrators. After it came the presentation of Mangai landscape and the methodology process, overview of opportunities, evaluation of restoration with landscape approach. The second part of that day was the visit on the ground. Saturday, June 1st, as expected, the site visit was the program of Fajalobi NGO based in Idiofa town. Ingong site was the first step on the visit, and different stakeholders discovered a rich and varied collection and well treated. Organizers of LUD gave their propositions in order to optimize its results.
Première chose, c'est de féliciter Fajalobi pour l'initiative.
First of all, we thank Fajalobi for the initiative because I have 30 years experience on this project. There is a big diversity. The nursery is well treated. Congratulations. This is a big pioneer's work because, as you can see, the site is degraded. From Kinshasa to this place, we have the same landscape, and for diverse reasons, as they told us that there were forest degradation. Besides the trees we also have acacias. They facilitate the degraded lands. For such a sort of soil, we have to fight the floods, because in case of flood or in case of rain, so the land or the space can resist. I'm going to recommend them to think about this.
Donc pour les autres étapes, je vais recommander qu'ils puissent se tenir compte de ça.
After Ingum, stakeholders went to visit another site called Paradise Valley. Agronomist manager of that site gave a presentation before responding to participant questions. Discussions on the apiculture model was a technique for the restoration of that landscape next to the agroforest with the involvement of the apiculture. The owner of Fajalobi NGO talks about motivations that pushed him to invest in DRC landscape restoration and especially in Idiofa.
L'œuvre de ma vie, ce que je peux faire, c'est reboiser, c'est restaurer la nature.
What I can do is to reforest, to restore nature, for the biodiversity, and to fight climate change. The second objective, to help the population to stabilize, to do what they call the empowerment, as we say it in English, because we have a civil society here and the people suffer. So I would like to help in that way. I have chosen Congo because I could use the same money in Europe, but Europe is too small. but I've chosen DRC because it's very big, and I don't have kids. So when I will not be there anymore, the people in DRC would benefit of this. I see that there are lives here. Even though I go to a small village, there are a lot of facilities. That's the reason why I would like to help the DRC. This visit on the ground aimed to discuss about some questions such as problems linked to the use of lands and resources and their management in the landscape. How actual practices for the use of lands profit to different stakeholders. These reflections brought to workshops around two questions. First, on the landscape vision, and lastly on the presentation of principal elements of the vision. After the discussion on different groups, the floor was given to every single participant to share his ideas. Baruka appreciates the commitment and the determination of different stakeholders to the dialogue on the use of lands.
Pour un projet qui n'a pas assez de ressources, pour un projet qui n'a pas des actions concrètes en termes.
For a project that does not have many resources and concrete actions that can help to help the population to get benefit of it, but I see the population is very motivated because they have accepted to work with us. They have participated to these discussions. So I noticed that the population is very motivated to find solutions to their problems because they are conscious of the problems, of difficulties they are facing. Last time we were in Mangai in a workshop. They talked and shared with us about problems they are facing. They have a lot of motivations, and it is very positive. And I think we have to support them to gather most of the time and to meet and gather to discuss about how they can find solutions. This workshop is a capacity building. The goal of this workshop is to see how they can take the initiative, get used to meet all the time and try to find solutions on their problems.
Comment ils peuvent avoir l'habitude d'organiser des petites rencontres entre eux pour trouver des solutions durables.
These workshops continued until evening in order to allow synthesis of workshop priorities. Tuesday, June 4th and last day of these meetings, participants gathered to the presentation different elements shared and the landscape vision challenge before the vote of priorities identified in former group works under the mediation of René Ngongo, one of the mediators of the dialogue. The question on the Mangai landscape restoration impacts on the subsistence means, on the environment, and on the less represented group, example women, were going to speak. For others, besides being a woman, there are landlords and Chantal Tulu, who is happy to attend the dialogue. We are very happy because we have been associated to this dialogue, because most of the time women are neglected on the management of lands. So our lands are exploited in disorder. I've learned a lot in this workshop. We are going to try our best to sensitize different women in different sectors and in villages. This last workshop was also an opportunity for Jean-Pierre Malala, President of Work Group on Governance, created in the framework of PLAS projects in order to improve forest ecosystem landscape governance and do the balance of its existence.
Le groupe de travail sur la gouvernance des réserves naturelles.
The workshop on the governance of natural reserve in hunting domain and in hippopotamus reserve of Mangai. We are helping people, the population, to be conscious, to involve themselves in the protection of the environment, instead of the government has to do that for them all the time.
La protection de l'environnement. Au lieu que ce soit une institution de l'État qui le passe à sa place.
The last day was rich with great lessons and experiences shared between the four countries for the implementation, stabilization projects of the use of lands. First of all, the Godwin Dikoto of Rocha for Ghana, who talked about two approaches that consist to promote conservation needs and traditional subsistence, such as apiculture, and putting in place a community structure to ensure local development and ask women involvement. Damien Akoto, Code Salt, agent from Ghana, talked about Wassa Amefi landscape, a forest landscape in which PLAS project works. It is a subject to many challenges such as illicit cut of trees. To fight such things, they have implemented cooperative that work in the manufacturing of soap and in poultry as alternative for development. Elizabeth Dadatus Luvinga from Tanzania shared work experience of organization for the landscape conservation of Loboro thanks to a series of trainings on the better use of lands. And lastly, Leo from Uganda shared his Agoro Aku landscape experience located in Uganda border with South Sudan and DRC with an approach based on the interconnectivity with agricultural lands, collaboration and common lands management. After sharing ideas, key lessons and defined next steps, the time for the closing ceremony of the 4 days dialogue on the use of lands, an opportunity for Paul Lemvo of the Congolese Institute for the Conservation of Nature to give a resume of lessons shared at the meetings.
Cette réunion nous a permis d'avoir autour d'une même table.
This meeting helped us to have around the table all the stakeholders, especially ICCN as authority in charge of the management of the reserve, the local administration and also the national administration, represented by the environment minister and the minister of rural development, but also the private sector operating in the reserve domain, and also the local NGO as OCÉAN, but also other private sectors members have worked together so that together we can work on the conservation, on the rural, on the agriculture, and how to reforest, and also the next time we will have to implement everything we have said here in order to restore the Mangai landscape. So that the population can be able to live and to benefit of the reserve. The associate of the program and executive director of the Forest Dialogue talks about objectives followed by the structures in organizing the meetings and the mechanism that they implement to consolidate views between subsistence needs and the conservation before the next.
S'articule autour de deux choses qui sont avoir de plus belles forêts.
TFT works on two problems, on 2 points. The first is to have very good forest, and second is to improve the subsistence means of the population. So TFT helps the population to participate in the problem solutions in order to contribute to the protection of their natural reserves,
Leur gestion responsable ainsi qu'à l'amélioration des moyens de subsistance.
Forest Dialogue for about 20 years now has made a specialty in bringing different stakeholder groups together, whether they are environmental groups, socially oriented groups, community members, indigenous peoples, companies, and government representatives. Our process and our model is built around how to reconcile those competing interests. This dialogue on the land use is about taking different opinions about how the land can be used and thinking about, if we do this here, then maybe we can do something else here. So thinking about a large landscape rather than one piece of land. When you only have one piece of land you discuss, you have conflict, because only one person or one idea can win. But if you talk about a larger landscape, then the environmentalists can think about where can we save wildlife and have conservation. At the same time, private sector or communities can say, okay, if we're having conservation here, then maybe over here we can think about livelihoods. We can think about planting trees or planting crops, or creating great collaborations is eco-tourism opportunities that do both. They work on conservation, but they also create livelihoods. So it's very important to use this process of dialogue as a model to show by meeting in these groups, you hear from everybody, you can understand that everybody's opinion is valid, right? You start from that process. It's all valid, but from there, we have to make decisions. So a process like this dialogue, and the Forest Dialogues model is to find win-win situations where you can do what you need to do, we can find a space for you to do what you need to do. And that's how this dialogue reconciles the different conflicting interests. The next steps will be defined by this group. I can tell you what I think they might be, but at the end of the day, it's the group meeting here in Idiofa that will determine specifically the next steps and the strategy for implementing the change and the restoration activities that they would like to see. It's my belief that they will take this learning, through the governance working group, and take this learning to the Mangai landscape. That is the intent. We're in Idiofa because it is a convenient location to meet, but the landscape of interest is still Mangai. So the discussions are about Mangai. Yes, we heard about the situation in Idiofa and Fajalobi, and that was an interesting project, but we are very focused on the specific situation in Mangai. We will come out of here with very well-defined next steps and activities and responsibilities for achieving those goals. And it's our interest to make sure that the governance working group has the tools and the support to be able to take this work to the Mangai landscape. That is our goal.
Lastly, that dialogue aimed the involvement of local communities and identification of means in order to support the work group on governance to integrate networks with other local actors, elaboration of strategy for a follow-up mechanism of the dialogue conclusions on the use of lands in order to guarantee the dialogue process, sustainability, and integration of results into the national policy.